All right, well, I just welcome everybody to our program this evening. This is high involvement planning, engaging your team in the strategic planning process. We are both in person and virtual tonight. So welcome to everybody on the virtual side and welcome to everybody in the room. If you are here in the room, you may have noticed that we have some snacks and drinks over here in the back. And Sheila made us some brownies. And if you're virtual, I'm really sorry that you don't get any brownies. Just to next time.
Hold it up to the camera.
Yes.
Yeah, we'll let you know what you're missing.
So this program is brought to you by SCORE Southwest Missouri. My name is Katie Pattison. I am the branch manager here at the Schweitzer Brentwood branch of the library. We work very closely with SCORE, and I also happen to be the SCORE workshop chair. Our program will be about an hour this evening. If you need water, we've got bottles of water back there, water fountains right out here, my friends right out there. I want to tell you just a little bit about SCORE before I turn it over to Tim. If you are not familiar with SCORE, SCORE is a nationwide nonprofit that helps businesses from idea to exit. 3 things to remember that SCORE can do for you. One of those is business mentoring. So SCORE provides free volunteer business mentors. Tim is a mentor.
Raise your hand if you're a mentor.
Look
at that.
We've got a couple of.
That's like 20% of the room right there.
Whatever your business is, whatever stage of business you're at, we have a mentor who can help you. If we don't have somebody in Southwest Missouri that has the expertise you need, you have access to SCORE mentors across the nation. So it's a great way for you to kind of support your business, have somebody to talk to about that. So you can sign up for a SCORE mentor if you don't have one at score.org or at our chapter website, which is swmissouri.score.org. The second thing to remember that SCORE does is workshops. So we do about 3 workshops a month here in Southwest Missouri. We've been doing them here in Springfield at different libraries. Sometimes we do at the E-Factory, been doing a few down in Christian County. And you can also access SCORE workshops on SCORE website. So whatever you're thinking about, whatever you're needing to learn, there's probably either a recorded SCORE webinar or a live one coming up from another chapter that you can watch right on the website. You can find those all at score.org. Just search for what you're looking for and you'll probably find something. We've got 3 coming up I want to tell you about. So our next one here in Southwest Missouri is how to handle an unhappy customer. That is with the Better Business Bureau. That one is happening at the Ozarks Library, or you can watch it virtually. It's March 14th at 2 p.m. The next one is March 21st. You'll see we do these on Tuesdays a lot, although today is Wednesday. Using neurobiology to make better business decisions. That is 6 p.m. at the Library Center, the library on South Campbell there. And then our next one after that, we're doing a few workshops with the Greene County Office of Emergency Management. So thinking about emergency preparedness, tornado season, lots of things going on. There's a giant snowstorm up north. There we've got some great workshops coming up for that. So that one is April 11th at 2 p.m. You can check out all of our upcoming workshops at swmissouri.score.org. Last thing I want to tell you about that SCORE does is the amazing templates, articles, blog posts on the SCORE website. There's great financial projections template, like an Excel template. So if you're doing financial projections, if you're making a marketing plan, whatever you're doing, there are some really great resources on that website at score.org. Those are all free to access. And I will turn it over to Tim. Thank you for being here today.
Hey, I'm going to go to that neurobiology workshop because I heard you get a free Elon Musk implant at the workshop. That's what I heard. I don't know if it's true. It might be a rumor.
Rumors.
So, well, thanks for coming tonight. Tonight's all about you guys. Has nothing to do with me. So if we get to slide 3 and you have 12 questions and we never make it past slide 3, I go home really happy because you got to ask your questions. So it's just like in your business, you make it all about your customers. At SCORE, we try to make it all about you. So if there's something you're really curious about or dying to know and we're not talking about it, just interrupt. So there aren't any rules here. Tonight's sponsored by Great Game of Business. I'm actually a certified Great Game coach. I work primarily in the nonprofit segment. So we have a great game for social sectors that I lead nonprofits in. And this is me. I'm a husband. I'm a dad. I got 2 beautiful daughters that are grown up and living the real good life because they work hard and have lots of fun. I like to play music and I like to grill. I'm a wannabe grill master. I spent the last 7 years, I retired in 2018 from Siemens Energy. I was executive director for their environmental solutions business here in the Americas. That's what I spent the bulk of my last half of my career doing. And so I got a lot of opportunity, both here in the States, but also internationally, to learn about business practice around the world. And so now I spend my time volunteering for Great Game and volunteering for SCORE and sharing them with great folks like you guys. So that's me. And Katie already talked about SCORE. That's who we are. If you want to look on this slide, these are some great resources. So she mentioned SCORE, and that's the SCORE website. And again, all of these are going to be available on YouTube, right, Katie, or something, or you can
Yes.
download this. I don't know.
Yep, it'll be on YouTube.
I want to give a shout out to the library, because one of the places that's fantastic in terms of not just having resources, but getting good answers. You know, rather than Google it, maybe you want to talk to somebody who really knows something, talk to a librarian. Every library has a business specialist in it. Is that correct, Katie?
Yes.
And that's kind of new. Used to, we had one business specialist for all of the libraries. Now we're working to grow business specialists in every library center. So any library that you're at, they can help you out. Fantastic resources, both in-house in the form of books. Anybody still read these? I do. I love books. So, and by the way, there's prizes tonight. Guess what they are? Books. Yeah. So I'm encouraging you to read. I love hard copy books, but I also use the Kindle a lot. But anyway, we got books, we got online databases, we got all kinds of great business resources. As a SCORE mentor, I actually do some of my research. I have one of my clients is here, Jeff. I got some research for Jeff that came from one of the databases on the library. It's really going to help us in our conversations as we, talk about strategy and marketing his business. So, library, great place. SBA, we've got an SBA office here locally. We've got a small business development center there at the E-Factory. SCORE is also at the E-Factory. And then there's a great resource, Missouri SourceLink, if you're not familiar with it. That's a statewide kind of online source for business resources and classes like this, access to lots of business information on that website. All right, well, I'm going to tell you the story of the worst management buyout in American history. You're pretty excited about that, huh? So I don't know how many of you are familiar. Great Game of Business grew out of a company here locally called SRC, Springfield Remanufacturing. If you want to think about where you can be 40 years from now, in 1983, International Harvester had a factory here, like they had factories all over the Midwest, Illinois, Missouri, Indiana. There were International Harvester factories everywhere. And in the early 80s, they were shutting them down. They were laying off about 1,000 people a week. So think about that. It's about 52,000 people in a year that were getting laid off during that time. Gas prices were going through the roof. I think they got almost up to $1. Can you believe that? Now, I was a kid then. I had just gotten out of high school and I had a hot rod. If you were a kid then, you had hot rods that you built yourself. And they got about 3 miles to the gallon. And gas, when I started the hot rod business, was 25 cents a gallon. But by the time 1983 rolled around, gas was getting close to $1 a gallon. I mean, it was tough times. Interest rates were 18%. So think about that. Now they're about 6.5. About a year ago, they were about 3.5 or 4. So things were really tough economically. We were in a heavy recession. It's actually the last, what economists refer to as lengthy recession. We certainly had downturns, but in the midst of all that, International Harvester called up the manager of the factory here. They had sent a man by the name of Jack Stack. He was in probably his late 20s at that time. They'd sent him down here to manage the factory, and they had called him up and said, "We've laid off all the people we can lay off." They had dwindled a factory of 1,000 down to about 120 employees. And they said, "Now it's time to close it." So that was Jack's job, to put these other 120 people out of business, 120 families. And so Jack got together with about a dozen of the other managers and they said, "Hey, let's buy it." So it's not uncommon in large corporations that if they're going to sell off an asset, sometimes they'll sell it to the employees because they already know how to run it. And so they proposed a management buyout. They said, hey, how much would you take for this factory? International Harbor said, no problem. We'd be glad to sell it to you, $9 million. So the 12 of them got together. They went to their families. They scraped together all the money they had. They got $100,000. So they were only short 8.9 million. So Jack's like, no problem. We'll just go to the bank. They'll loan us the money. So he went to the first bank and they asked him, so when are you going to pay us this $8.9 million back? And Jack's response was, I didn't know the answer to that. I didn't know you had to pay it back. I thought we just paid interest and it just kept going. And that's how it worked. After about 15 banks, every bank he went to, he learned something new about how business worked. I mean, this guy had been running factories his whole career, but he'd never been taught the language of business, the financial language of business. How many of you feel that way sometimes in your own business? And you're like, what in the heck is a cash flow statement? But Jack started to learn that when he went in to borrow the money, he needed a pro forma, which included a profit and loss statement, a cash flow statement, and a balance sheet, the three tools that we use to operate businesses. And he needed to be able to demonstrate in the next few years how he would pay the money back and how much money he needed. So once he started learning this, he got up to about the 20th bank. He's like, I think I got it now. So he went to 30 more banks and they kept saying no. And then one day he's reading the Wall Street Journal and there's a big full page ad, Bank of America. We're looking for high risk investments. Jack got on an airplane. He flew to Chicago. It was the 53rd or 54th bank call he had made. And he walked in, he says, hey, have I got a business for you? And they loaned him $8.9 million at 18% interest. And he got back home and he's like, we did it. Oh crap, we did it. Because they had an 89-to-1 debt to equity ratio. They owned 100,000 of the business. The bank owned 8.9 million. And in 30 days, their first payment was due. And so Jack got everybody together and he developed what was learned has come to be known as open book management. He developed a way for the employees to get involved, to learn about the business, and to help participate in the decision making, because he knew if he didn't have everybody on that team focused on paying that note for cash, he only had to miss one payment and the bank would take it. Yes. And tell me your name again.
My name's Allison.
Allison?
Yes.
Okay.
Do you know if those 120 or so remaining workers, were they still turning a profit at the time that this financing went through? Or did they also have, the payment due and the business wasn't?
What a great question, Allison. Because did they care if they were turning a profit or did they care more about something else? Does anybody know? Michael, what do you care more about than profit?
Cash flow.
Cash flow. Their problem was having the cash to make the payment. Of course, profit goes towards cash flow, but that's not the only thing that impacts cash flow. If I have a bunch of suppliers that I owe money to, and I just paid them all my cash, and then the bank comes along and says, hey, I want my check. I'm like, oh, I forgot. I got to pay you a check. So cash flow can be a tricky little animal. And so that was what he had to teach his people. It's all about the cash for right now. And so in the middle of this diagram, Allison, there's a little, in that Venn diagram, the three different pieces, the middle thing is a critical number. So their critical number was cash and paying off that debt. And within about 5 years, they went from 89-to-1, get ready to celebrate this, to 1.8-to-1 debt to equity ratio. That means they owned almost as much as the bank owned in 5 years. They also went from, what was their value when they bought the business? Anybody remember? $9 million. In 5 years, they were worth $43 million. They had multiplied by 5 the value of that business. And they had recovered back equity of almost 89-1. So that's a tremendous story just in the first 5 years. That should get you enthusiastic about your business. Now, they taught this and they still do this and operate this way. And so we're going to talk about one of the components of this operating process that they use at SRC that you can use in your business. I'll tell you what book you need to read because it's in a book. So books are pretty much free at the library, I think.
That is true.
You can't keep them, you have to return them.
Yeah.
But you can renew them.
Yes, you can.
And if we don't have it at our library, where can you get it?
Well, you can get it from another library via Mobius.
Another library where, like across the street or anywhere?
Well, just about anywhere.
Just about anywhere. Wow. Because I actually went looking for the Great Game of Business. We didn't have it here, but I ordered it from Ohio or something. And then they're going to deliver it and then they'll call me and I'll come by and pick it up at the drive-thru window.
There you go.
So the three little parts of this that were really important was Jack realized he needed to be a teacher. He needed to educate his team. They had to teach the rules. He realized that he needed to get everybody to follow the score. Because in a game, if you're not keeping score, it's just practice. So he needed to teach people how this magical mystery bus of financial numbers worked. After he'd figured it out, he realized this isn't very tough. And you do the same thing over and over every month, and it's just addition and subtraction. Anybody can learn this. I'm going to teach everybody. And that's what he did. He then said, okay, I'm going to put up a scoreboard and we're going to keep score every week. We're going to come around for 15 minutes. We're going to stand in front of the scoreboard and we're going to keep score. And we'll talk a little bit about that today. That's called a rhythm. So every week, check in, check the score, check in, check the score, check in, check the score. The last thing he did was provide a stake in the outcome. And this is where he really got employee buy-in and employee engagement. Allison asked me the question earlier because I work with nonprofits. I work with purpose-driven businesses. She said, do a lot of great game businesses, are they purpose-driven? And they are, because they care about their people. They're usually passionate about the communities that they live in. And so this system works really well with them. So here, if you fast forward 40 years from now, so if you're a business owner and you're young, like maybe Todd, and you're going to be a business owner for 40 years. Todd, if you'd invested $1,000 in SRC in 1983, it would be worth 9,000 times that today. So that'd be how much money? $9 million. Anybody can do complex mathematics. 9,000 times $1,000 will be $9 million. So those 12 original owners that put together $100,000, how much was their $100,000 worth today? Just one more zero. Two more. 900 million. So amazing how much you can do in 40 years. So today, SRC does annually about $600 to $700 million a year. They have their last 10 years, their critical number was cash. They forecasted that in 2000 or sometime shortly after 2000, the economic conditions would get difficult. And they forecasted a potential recession, which we're in. So they stocked away cash. They have $100 million in cash in the bank. They call it their war chest. And right now, during a recession, what does everybody do? What do you do when you don't have money? Borrow. You borrow, but what else do you do? You don't spend, but now you don't even have enough. What do? You sell stuff. So real estate's gonna get cheaper and cheaper because people are gonna need to sell it. And that's exactly what SRC is doing for the next 10 years. Is they're reinvesting that 100 million back into the company. They're buying businesses, they're buying real estate, and they're growing the company kind of to the next scale. Great story. Didn't know if anybody knew it, but wanted to tell you that story because it's the backdrop of what we're going to talk about tonight. So now it's your turn. Tell me about if you're in business, number one, but if you are you just validating an idea? Are you here tonight validating an idea? Then you'd be A. Have you just started? You've been in it a year or two, maybe 3, or have you been doing this? It's more than 3 years and you've been at business for a while. We'll start up here. Tell us your name and are you A, B, or C?
Jeff Maddox, ABC.
Okay, Jeff, and what kind of business do you do?
Beekeeping. I pull bees out of houses and businesses and trees for people.
Who knew that you could make a business out of beekeeping? But Jeff,
Well, I didn't say I was successful. I haven't.
you've been doing it more than 3 years.
Yeah.
Go back here, Jeff.
I'm Jeff James, American Fruit Products. I'm a C. Been in business for 17 going on 18 years. I'm a B to A. Not really. I'm just kind of getting. I just got my LLC and just starting to kind of see what's out there. But it's supplement education, personal training, just kind of functional wellness, that kind of stuff. So alternative to modern healthcare.
Okay.
Like Michael.
Sheila.
Well, I'm a SCORE volunteer. That's my biggest thing. I have a little business that's kind of, it's been in existence since 2017. It's an LLC, but I haven't done anything with it. So it exists and you can, it looks like there's a business, but there's nothing. It's just me. My history is as a psychotherapist, a life coach, and a nutritionist, and health and wellness and all that nonsense. That's like my specialty. So
Back row.
Well, we're kind of the odd ducks in the room. I think we're both people that are, well, I won't speak for you, but I think we're both interested in one day having our own businesses. But the reason we're here today is because
Getting all my paperwork, I'm incorporating by a couple months.
So you're validating an idea.
I got my domain, got everything ready, so it's coming.
So you're in the first year then.
Accounting, all that, but, we're really just in marketing for Great Game. We want more information specifically about high involvement plan.
we just kind of wanted to see why people would be interested in this and, you know, what your goals are for learning about this sort of stuff yourself. So if anyone wants to talk briefly.
So
after
yeah,
this,
help me remember at the end. Let you ask some questions.
Okay, great.
Yeah, and then y'all can respond if it's interesting to you or not. I don't know. I just made this stuff up. Okay, Mike, tell me.
Michael Bauer and Kelly Bauer. We are greenhouse systems. And we are B. We're a medical, independent medical practice here.
I gotta tell you, I don't know how I got so lucky because I know most of you guys because I work with 3 of you, so it's kind of neat. So anyway, glad to have y'all here. Thank you and appreciate your feedback. By the way, if you do play along tonight with the audience participation round, you can win a free book. Of course, you might not want to because you don't want to carry it around, but you know, if you don't, let me know. I'll get you the audio version. So we're going to talk about high involvement strategic planning, and I'm going to cover really 4 areas. I'm going to focus most of the time on strategy because a lot of people, number one, strategy is misunderstood, and a lot of people like to talk about it and discuss it. So we're going to talk a lot about that. We're going to start by talking about involvement or getting buy-in because it's important to get your team involved, to get your clients involved, to get your family members. The more people you can ask around the table and get feedback, the more you can validate for your ideas. Strategy is imagination. It's ideas. It's not a plan. And so if you're validating ideas, you can validate them a couple of ways. You can go out in the marketplace and you can say, I built this. I think everybody wants one. It cost me $100,000 to build. Who would like one? They're $59 each. Oh, nobody bought it. I just validated it to the cost of $100,000. Or I could have talked to my friends, could have talked to some potential clients, could have done some really, today is so amazing. When I was growing up, you couldn't do what you can do today. I can go find a group of customers on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and I can do a poll and ask them questions and figure out things without spending really anything in terms of hard capital. So validating and getting involvement from people around you is very important. So we'll touch on that. And we'll talk briefly about planning. How does strategy convert to planning? They're both important. And then I'll leave you with one last slide on rhythm, because rhythm is super important. I told you I'm a musician wannabe. I've always played music my whole life. Music's not as much fun without the drummer or the bass player. they really kind of add some groove. So you got to know your groove, you got to have a groove, and the same thing is true with business. Real quick video clip. These are some SRC employees. They have the ultimate buy-in because they actually own the business. I didn't mention that in the story, but they have over 2,000 employees here in Springfield area. They're all owners of the business. So SRC is a fully employee-owned business. So they have the ultimate buy-in, and that's their business, and they're committed. And here's a story from some of the people at the business. No sound.
Hold on.
Okay, we'll fix that.
Sorry.
Did we do something here?
Yeah.
Okay. Put you in charge. Call a librarian, they know. They have the real answer. Don't Google it. Oh, I can play it if you want. It was like all the way up. Or most of the way.
I came to SRC, I had heard of PSOP. I can remember it just like it happened yesterday. Jack was given a departmental meeting, recap it all. When you buy in, you have water and whatnot, by the time you retire, you'll be able to buy a new home. I bought in pretty quick.
We got our first ESOP certificate. One of my friends looked at it, like, yeah, retire and because I'd be lucky to buy it. And a cup of coffee and start that. As it turned out, now that guy could suitably buy a Starbucks franchise. So it is.
I started to see the potential from the ESOP about when I got fully invested. It's really like 100% now. You talk to some people that are maybe in the 40s and 50s, and they got zero retirement. And at that time, it was like, hey, this is a big deal. I don't have to worry about my future because SRC is taking care of it.
Employee ownership has impacted my life. Jack always talked about at the beginning that that ownership equity was the true key to love, and that's absolutely true.
Through, huddles and teaching the financial literacy, all that, you give people the power to say, here's the number we need to hit, this is the number. And then in doing that, the company will start to grow over the years. You own that, this job is yours. It's not affecting someone else's pocketbook. It specifically affects yours if we don't show up and own it. Good job. All of a sudden you come up towards the end of the career, you get $20 a share hike, and you got several thousand shares of stock. It's a good feeling. But it comes at a price. It isn't given to you. It's hard work, it's dedication. You gotta have it's an impacted my life in a positive way.
My first certificate, 1984, was $22. The last one was far bigger. So just be patient. It'll just take care of it.
So that's the ultimate buy-in or involvement. And at SRC, when they plan year round. We'll talk about that during the rhythm phase. But they involve all the employees and all the departments throughout the company, not only in terms of getting their input into the planning, but also in what they want to know is, do you believe it? Do you buy into it? And what's your confidence level? All of their plans for all their businesses are scored by a confidence level by their employees. So if the employees aren't confident in it, then the managers have to go back to square one and try again. They don't get a good confidence score. Because again, employees know, people that are on the front line building things and making things, they're the ones that actually know, the ones that are talking to the customers, the ones that are doing the actual production work, the ones that are doing the engineering design, the ones that are treating the patients, they know. And so having their confidence is critical to that business. By the way, $22, his certificate in that video, the first stock certificates issued to those original owners, 10 cents a share. So by 1984, they were at $22. a share. By 2015, they were at $200 a share. And we showed you that 9,000 times, if you had a 10-cent share, it'd be worth significantly more today. So one of the things that they teach at SRC is people support what they help create. And it can be challenging because a lot of times in business, we think, hey, you know, that people don't want to get involved in all this. They just want to come do their job. But people generally are interested, and they actually, if you can connect to their passion and what they do and show them how that connects to the overall business, you can get levels of involvement like this. I'm also a big fan of employee-owned businesses. It's kind of, for me, what I call the new capitalism, and it's a really growing trend in this country. But we really grew wealth in our country by encouraging home ownership, okay? Now I want to see us encourage individuals have business ownership, because that's where the next generation of wealth in this country really comes from. It really gives you a stake in the outcome, a piece of the business. It's also great if you're an exiting owner, because you get tremendous tax benefits to actually sell your business to your employees. So there's lots of different kinds of advantages to that. But the point of all of that, this conversation is get people around you involved. And if they helped you create something, they're likely going to support it. I love this quote. If people are committed to the desired result, but the plan turns out to be inadequate, committed people learn from that, make corrections, and still achieve. When people are not committed, they watch your beautiful plan slowly veer off course. And when it crashes, they secretly smile. That couldn't be any truer. We all know it because we're like that. You didn't ask me. I'm just going to sit back here and watch. My wife works for a very large organization in the community, and I watch every night as she comes home and secretly smiles as their plan goes off the deep end because they don't ask her. Because she does healthcare, and she's all about patient care, and her organization is not. Michael probably knows something about that, but it really is a truism for all of us. All right, on from involvement, step one. Step two, strategy versus planning. I'm going to talk most about strategy, but I wanted to set up the differences for you because a lot of times we use the term strategic planning when mostly what we do in business is planning. We love to plan as human beings, and we love to plan with data. I used to have a boss. I love this guy. He would tell me, Tim, in God I trust, everyone else bring data. And I thought, well, that's clever. That makes a lot of sense. Until I realized that strategy doesn't exist yet. Strategy is about trying to convince someone to make a choice about your organization or your product that you don't control. And when you have an idea of how to accomplish that, you're just making a guess. You've got to go out and test it. So there may not be data. Now you can set up and track data once you have a hypothesis or a theory, but there isn't existing data on a new idea. Do you think there was any data around when they launched the iPhone as to whether people would pay that much for a telephone? And how many of y'all have in your pocket an iPhone? How many have an iPhone? Raise your, be honest. How many have an Android? Same, it's a smartphone. But originally, this was the only smartphone. And I remember when this came out in the very first conference, you know, when it was on and they showed it and they made the first phone call and they downloaded this. I already had the iPod. Who had an iPod before you had an iPhone? Is anybody old enough? All right. And, you know, they got people to pay 3 times the cost of an MP3 player. You could buy Zoom and some of the other MP3 players at the time for 1/3 of what you could buy an iPod. And they had to convince, they had a theory that they could convince the marketplace to buy that device at 3 times the cost. But they had to ask some questions. What would have to be true to get Katie to spend 3 times what she could buy the same device for? And they discovered what had to be true is, well, you had to be able to get instant access to music that you didn't know. And you had to not buy an album anymore. You could just buy a song for 99 cents. And so when they sorted out the strategy of what had to be true, and they launched the iPod, and then they later launched the iPhone. It was a huge success, and everybody knows how wealthy the people that own the first stock in Apple are. So,
And what happened Monday?
I don't know what happened Monday.
Someone sold the very first iPhone.
Oh, did they
Yeah.
in
really?
a box-
I didn't see
had it
that.
In a box at an auction for $65,000.
No kidding. I think I have one of those. I've saved all my iPhones all these years because people trade them in, but I'm like, no, I'm gonna put it back in the box. I've got a little stack of them. Wonder if I have the first one. 65,000? You know what I'm doing today? I'm gonna make a strategy.
There you go.
So strategy is all about external. It's about the customer. It's about using our imagination and creating something that doesn't exist yet. It's about figuring out how to achieve getting the customer to make a purchasing choice or a service choice with us. And if you're in nonprofit, it's about getting the donor to support your cause. It's all the same. Planning is what we love to do. Planning is, I think I need to open a new manufacturing facility. Let me make a plan on how much that'll cost, and I'll present it to my board tomorrow, and I'll tell them why they ought to do it. That's a plan. And so we love that because we go get data and we say, well, if I could open this new manufacturing plant, I could reduce my scrap and rework by 2%. I could actually drive productivity up by 3%, and we would be a much better company. That's a plan. Nothing wrong with that, but understanding the difference is what I want to highlight and get you to focus on. Any questions on the difference between strategy and planning before I dive into strategy? So planning is mostly internal. It has mostly to do with things we do. It has to do with our cost, our people, what our organization needs to do to be successful. It's a lot of action items. It's a lot of things for us to do, whereas strategy is creativity. It's innovation, it's ideas, it's taking risk on the external, and it's coming up with a theory. It's validating your theory and then going out in the marketplace and testing it and seeing if it came true. And if it didn't come true, then you make an adjustment and try another theory and another theory and another theory until you find the one that's the big hit. That makes sense. Best book on strategy you'll ever read. It is a book, but you can get it on Kindle and it is on Audible. You can listen to it if you like. Roger Martin is one of my favorite theorists and business thinkers. So Roger Martin and A.G. Lafley worked at Procter & Gamble. So Procter & Gamble is a huge conglomerate. They have lots of different lines of products. And that's an interesting thing. I come out of Siemens. It was like a Procter & Gamble. We had over 500,000 employees. We were in 200 countries around the world. We had 10 different major business units. I was in the energy business segment. Each of our business segment was a $10 to $20 million segment of business centered around a certain technology. And so in a company like that, you've got a strategy at the top, but then each business segment needs to build a strategy that aligns with it, but is their own thinking, it's their own ideas. Because if the boss comes down and says, Katie, here's your strategy. Do I buy into it? Usually not. I usually go, that'll never work. Because I know something that Katie doesn't, because Katie's at a different playing field. She's at a different level in the organization. So these two guys were in Procter & Gamble and worked together to create the Olay line. Everybody familiar with Olay? If you're a beauty product person, I use lots of beauty products in my household. I live in a household full of ladies, and it's funny, they don't really use a lot of beauty products, but their mom didn't, so I guess they learned that from me. But Olay was a beauty product line that they wanted to make best in class. At the time that they built a strategy for it, it was basically a Walgreens $3.99 skin cream for elderly women over the age of 60. And that was their product line. And they wanted to turn that into a best in class. So they did a lot of theorizing and figured out how to do that. And now it's one of I think it is the leading beauty line, if not the leading, one of the top beauty lines in the industry. Great book about the story of that. But they interweave into it the concept of strategy. And in this book, Roger says, strategy is an integrated set of choices. He talks a lot about choices. You know, you can choose this or you can choose that. We can build the iPhone, we can make it smaller, we can make it big. We can make it hold 100 songs, or we can make it hold 1,000,000 songs. Which does our customer want? And it's a series of choices that you have to make. And when you do it right, it puts you in a unique position because it compels your audience. It compels, that's a great word, isn't it? I'm compelled to buy that. I need that iPhone because it holds 1,000 songs. I gotta have 1,000 songs in my pocket. That was their marketing, by the way, at the iPod. 1,000 songs in your pocket. I was compelled to dole out. I mean, I had a pretty small, I think I was getting about $3.25 an hour, but I came up with that, whatever it was, $199 to get that iPod. The little wheel. Had to have the wheel. But it basically creates an advantage for you in the marketplace. Great book. Encourage you to go out and learn about it. I'm gonna skip over it. So this is the strategy choices that AG and Roger boiled it down. They basically said, you know, there's only a handful of choices that you're going to make. And these are them. And they boiled it down to these 5. They wanted to make it simple and fun to build strategy. The first one, oh, and by the way, the little circles, the little links, these 5 choices are interconnected and interwoven. So you can't break them apart. You can't just do 2 of them. And you have to iterate them. You have to look at the first one and then make the decision about the second one and then check it back against the first one. Does it match what we're trying to do in the first one? Then you go to the third one and check it against the second and the first. Very unique system and makes it fun. So the first one is, what's our winning aspiration? You know, some people are in business and they don't think about winning. They just think about surviving. Oh, it's okay as long as I get 23%, 23.6% of the marketplace. My boss is happy and I get good points on my score and I keep moving up the ladder. So that's good for me. That counts as winning, but it's not aspiration. And so they talk about in the book, what is the motivating aspiration behind a company? So, you know, Todd, I love that you said you're a pharmacist, but you're kind of anti-pharmaceutical. So that's kind of an aspiration of yours, is probably to get people the kind of treatment and care they need with as little pharmaceutical and intervention as possible. I'm just guessing. But if I was sitting in a strategy session with UFC, is that part of your aspiration? Is that one of your values? I'm going to ask for affirmation. Is that correct? Yeah. Yeah. So I took a value of Todd's that I learned about him and I figured, hey, that's probably going to be in his business strategy somewhere, is we get you the least amount of pharmaceuticals in your system as possible. I don't know. Then you have to ask, where are you going to play? So you can't play everywhere. You know, I think about Amazon. When Amazon first started, they were focused on what? Books. And they were playing in the field of bookstores. And their aspiration at the time was, we want to be the galaxy's #1 bookstore in the universe. That's a big aspiration, but not today. Look at Amazon today. So your aspirations can and do change over time, but it's where you are at the time and what you're trying to accomplish. So they wanted to play in the bookstore space, but they decided they didn't want to play in the local bookstores. They did what? They moved to a new playing field that nobody was playing in, online. And what did it give them? What advantages did it give them? How did they win? Well, on the online, you can buy books 24 hours a day. People that read books, tell me if I'm wrong, Katie, they like to know what other book readers think. They like recommendations. Goodreads, which Amazon ultimately bought, is the #1 book recommendation online site there is, and now it's a part of Amazon. So they took recommendations, they took convenience online. Actually, in the early days, Amazon made a lot of money on shipping. They saw a value in shipping. That was one of their profit centers when they first started. So they won in those ways by choosing the online field with an aspiration to be the bookstore for every book reader. And they probably pretty much smashed that one. And then they moved on to some others, and now they want all our groceries and our movies, and what else did you get from him? Prescriptions, yeah.
The healthcare company.
Yeah, there you go.
I think they actually sell the books at a loss now.
As a loss leader, see?
Yeah.
New strategy. How will we win? Hey, let's give our books away just to keep people coming because we make a whole lot on movies or whatever. Audible, I pay them a lot for Audible. I don't know about y'all.
Yeah, streaming service.
Yeah, streaming. So those are how the 5 questions. So what's the aspiration? Where will we play? What playing field will we play on? What's the way the company's gonna play on the field to win? What are you gonna do to be unique and distinct? And what capabilities do you need? So Amazon needed infrastructure, networks, stuff that didn't even exist. I think of Netflix. Did you have Netflix when it wasn't a streaming service? How many had Netflix before it was a streaming service? God, we're all dating ourselves. What was the number? Well, did you have children while you had Netflix? Okay. What was the #1 challenge with Netflix when you got it in the mail?
I think we would lose them or forget who had it where, and we had to have it back in a certain amount of time.
Yeah, but you had to have it back to get a new one. They didn't charge you for it because Blockbuster was before Netflix. And if you didn't get your movie back and you didn't rewind it, they charged you a rewinding fee and they charged you a late fee and they charged you one every day. And Netflix said, we won't charge you. You keep it as long as you want, but you don't get the next one until you get it back. Another big challenge they faced is how do you ship a disc around and make it work? It doesn't get scratched up. Have you ever had your children and you're watching Bambi and it's like the last part and the DVD stops? And then your children look up at you with those little Bambi eyes and they're like, Daddy, make it work. But that was a big problem. They had to figure out how to minimize the damage to the disc so that Bambi didn't stop on the last 30 minutes and cause customer frustration. Oh, we better move along. See, I have too much fun doing this series. So the core of this is where you'll win, where you'll play, and what capabilities you got to have in place. And then lastly, what management systems are required. Some ways to think about this, and I just made some simple slides. I like these sort of fill in the blank things, like when I was a kid in school, what do they call that? Mad something. Used to make up stories and they let, yeah, Mad Libs, that's it. I like to make Mad Libs out of business things, right? So if I'm trying to figure out what my purpose or mission is, I like to ask people, well, what do you want to build? What is it you're trying to build? And within the next 3 to 5 years, XYZ company, you're going to grow it into how big a business? Let's say you're going to grow from a $5 million business to a $40 million business. Where are you going to do that? Is it local? Is it regional? Is it national? What type of business are you going to be in? Are you going to be in the print on demand business or the label business or both? Making up those decisions. What are your key products? So these are ways you can just jog your mind. On vision, one of the things I like to think about for visioning is who, when we're talking about, I'm going to jump in. When we're talking about vision and mission is who are you helping? If you put the who at the center of everything, you usually can't go wrong. Who am I trying to serve with my business or my service product or my nonprofit? And so thinking about the who and what benefit or service do I provide to them can be a really helpful Mad Lib to create. How will you win? What critical problem is your customer facing? If you've been in any SCORE stuff, the first thing we always try to focus you on is doing a business model canvas so that we can get you to focus in on what your plan is. And if you do lean canvas, which is what I prefer, one of the boxes is what's your purpose? What's the problem you're trying to solve? And how do you solve it? It's more outwardly focused and it's the strategy. You can actually take the lean canvas and draw a line down the middle. All the stuff on the left side that's outward looking is all about the customer. Or I might have them backwards, right hand side. And all the other stuff is all about you. And it all inward looking. So I summed up a bunch of questions for you. We're not going to read through these because you can read them in your own time, but these are kinds of questions that you ask when you're going through this kind of a process. So now we'll play a quick game. You get one guess per player. Per business. So we're gonna look at a business, we're gonna look at its strategy. If you want to guess, you have to raise your hand, because I'm old and I can't keep track of things. Raise your hand to guess. If two hands go up at the same time, who's the judge? I'm the judge, that's right, I'm the judge. And winner guess gets a prize. So here we go. So this is a business and their winning aspiration is to be the world's most loved, most efficient, and most profitable airline. Anytime you think you know, you can raise your hand. They have a warrior spirit. They desire to be the best. They want to be courteous. They want to show a sense of urgency. They want to be innovative. Got to answer, got to guess, raise your hand. Score members are not allowed. No, I'm just kidding. You can play. Anybody else? Okay. Where do they play? Price sensitive, time sensitive, time.
Spirit.
What?
Spirit Airlines.
Wow. Keep going. Kelby. Nope. Southwest. Jeff, you want a book, man? Southwest. So this was built off of their strategy book. Good guessing. So we'll kind of skip over the other ones. Safe, low fares. Again, Southwest, when they started, all the major carriers were $300-400 for a flight. Southwest said, we want to be the Greyhound of the airline business. In other words, we want to move you around at about the cost of a Greyhound ticket or slightly more. And their airfare started at $89, $79, $69, which was what Greyhound was at the time. Oh, they had very standardized. They only bought one type of jet. They turned jets around like 20 times faster. Instead of being at the gate 30 minutes, they were at the gate like 10 minutes. So they really increased and created a lean company. Here's the next one. Positively impact the world, enrich people's lives through technology, and contribute to the common good. Unleash the power of people. Think they get buy-in? They unleash the power. Learn from challenge and change. Show respect, humility, and integrity. You think they get buy-in from their staff? Probably if they do that. I don't know if they do it. I do know that they do. I love this company. One of my favorite companies.
I have a virtual guest here.
Oh, virtual guest. What do they say?
Facebook.
Okay, we'll keep going. Ideal customer, educated tech junkie. How many of y'all fall in that category? Well, I'm not educated, but I'm a tech junkie. Market segment, North America, omni channels. Come on, Blue Assist. No. Latest devices and services all in one place. Where can you go get them all? Kelby.
Best Buy.
Best Buy. Kelby, you want a book?
I actually like books, so.
Oh, good. Hey, that's what you got one. Your mom wanted one. So Best Buy, if you want a great model to follow as a leader in business, go read the ex-CEO. He just exited Best Buy in like 2020 or 2021, I don't remember. Jolly is his last name. Heart of Business is the name of the book. That is one of my all-time favorite business books because I know some of you in here personally. And the thing I love about working with you is that you have a heart. You care about your people and you really want to see them thrive and do well. And that's, again, that's a core principle. And Best Buy built that in. When Best Buy was taken over, they brought this guy in. He was an MBA out of Europe and he'd been in a lot of different industries, but never in retail. And they brought him in and he turned that business around. Best Buy was about to go bankrupt. And this is the story, he wrote his memoir, and it's a great story of how they turned that business around and how they didn't do it like most corporate turnaround guys do. They come in, they lay off 60% of the staff, cut cost. It looks good on paper for a year. They take their bonus check and they head for the hills, leave it for the next person. And everybody's angry in the business. Boys don't want to be there. They hate the company. It's a terrible environment. The next person comes along, God bless them. And I've been there in Siemens. I've gotten a business unit like that, where it was just jacked up. The numbers were just pumped up. And then they leave it to you and you got to figure out how to tell people, it's okay, we're going to do things different. Yeah, right. Sure you are. But Best Buy, they really did. Neat story. All right, I'm gonna skip this last one because it's SRC and that was the hardest one to guess. If you want a book, come by. If I've got one, I'll give it to you. If not, let me know and I'll send you one. Last little note on planning. This is the SRC one-page strategic plan. You don't need to think about reading it. It's not there. It's really just to show you they do one-page business planning at SRC, a $700 million a year company, and they have a one-page strategy playbook. Now, they have a book that's this thick that backs it up. But that's what they carry around to their meetings. That's what they focus on. That's what, when they have a question in their meeting, they can refer to and say, what are we supposed to be doing on that? As a new business or early business owner, or even a business that's been in for a while, if you don't have a one-page business plan, let me encourage you to start with a lean canvas business model. And I'll get you the tool, I'll get you the resource on how to do it. But it is a one-page like SRC, but a lot simpler. SRCs has a little bit of complexity to it for, of course, for a multi-division business, very large. This is all the average business needs. And you can then carry this around. And when your employees ask or your customers ask, you can summarize in a couple of words who your key markets are, what your problem you're solving, what your solution is, what your cost is built around, and how you make money. And I divided it down the middle because on this side is planning. It's all the inside stuff. How much are your costs? How much do I spend on, whatever, printing supplies or medical supplies or labor, all those costs. On the other side is all about the strategy piece. That's where you did all that work we talked about at first about where do I play and how do I win? Those all end up in these boxes. So John Martin's book feeds into these one-page plans very well. It's kind of how I did it when I was in business, and it's what I encourage people today. It's a great way to get your left and right brains. And I read an article, that's not really a thing, but I always use it. But it lets you really think externally and think internally. That's the planning part. So you do make plans, but you do your strategy first, and you build your plans off your strategy. And then you need a rhythm. So at SRC, they review their strategy 4 times a year. That's their first line item. So once a quarter, they look at that one-page sheet. Is there anything here that needs to change? They have a sales plan, which is whether they do their evaluation of clients. It's that left side of that lean canvas. They look at the customers, they look at the market segments, they look at what's going on in the markets. Are things moving up or down? And they make a sales plan and they check in on it twice a year. Then they do a financial plan at the end of the year where they take the financials and they forecast out based on this much sales, based on this many people, this much cost, this is how our business can operate. And then they look at their people plan twice a year and evaluate people. Then the operational, notice there's 4 check marks in every month. That's because once a week, they meet and they look at operationally in each department, where are we at on our department's critical number and how does it feed up into the whole organization's critical number. And it's that rhythm that has created this level of success as well as the involvement. That's all I got to teach you because my time's almost up. But now it's your turn. You can ask, these guys are going to ask y'all some questions, or you can ask questions if you like. And I'll stick around as long as y'all like, but I'm supposed to say officially that we're finished, but then we can stay here, right, Kate?
Yes,
Are there any online questions? I forgot to ask them.
not yet.
Okay. That's a lot of high level, heavy head stuff, but it gets you thinking, I hope. So
So Tim, everybody who's here that's registered for this, will we get an email? They'll have this whole thing so that we can see it.
Yes. So, or if you're okay with sharing your slideshow. So what we'll typically do with SCORE is send out a follow-up email that includes the slides, if the presenter is willing to share them, which he is in this case, and a recording of today's session. So you can watch for that within about a week or so. We'll have that out to you.
and if it's really confusing, then you can go on the SCORE website, say, I need a mentor, and you can actually request the presenter and say, I need that mentor because I need to explain that crazy slide deck. But I do encourage you to read the book. It's a great book, and a lot of this comes straight out of that book. Other questions? Confusing? Simple? Boring?
Is everyone in attendance, were you interested because you've already heard of Great Game of Business and you were specifically interested in hearing that approach? Or were you interested because you wanted to know about high involvement planning? Or was it a more general, I'm trying to get my business up and running, or I have like these things that I'm troubleshooting within my business and I just want to see if I can learn something here?
Good bunch of questions. Anybody want to field those?
I
or-
think for me, it was the high involvement planning, just wanting to know that, and Tim, we work with Tim, so I like to support him and listen to him, he's a wealth of knowledge, so anytime he says something, it's, I want to listen, so. We're gonna miss being here.
Did you call my wife?
I know. I don't know, you understand that too.
Every time we meet with, I'm not, not just trying to be nice here. Every time we meet with Tim and in our store, we learn a lot, learn more, and it tries to be important. So we try to take advantage of any opportunity that we can to learn how to improve our business and grow. And try to constantly self-reflect on what we're doing. That's really
And are you interested in these sort of like human-centric models specifically? What drove you to be more interested into that realm of business as opposed to sort of the more
Profit center.
yeah,
It's all about the money, or is it all about the people?
We get, I mean, you like whenever you're an employee, all you want, you have like so many good ideas and they are shot down all the time. And it's so funny because then like, the corporate will come in and have the exact same idea, and like, they're just like, they just mention terrible. And so we never want to do that for our employees. Like, we want to be their idea and be recognized for that. And like, we're always just trying to figure out how to make them feel like proud of their work that they do, and that they matter. And so, yeah, this is like perfect for where we are now. Adjust.
yeah, it's so frustrating when you're given a task or a goal to accomplish and you're told exactly how you're supposed to go about it. But even before embarking on it as the employee, that it's potentially not going to work because, it's your role, it's your department, whatever, it better. Yeah, that's really cool. Glad to hear that.
So personal story, when I'm not mentoring businesses, which I love to do, I mentor MBA students in the engineering program up at UMKC. And one of the students I had this week finished her undergraduate, went to work for the brand she thought was the most fabulous company in the world. I won't mention their name, but they were a very up and coming clothing brand. And they had treated her wonderfully as a customer. And when she went to work for them, it was a completely different experience as an employee. And after about 7 or 8 months, she said, I'm done with this. This isn't what I thought this was at all. So it really does matter to how successful the business is to how successful the people are. So, and you guys are great at this. Keep rocking. Any other questions?
I have a question. Is there a lean canvas template on the SCORE website if someone?
There
wanted to
is,
access that?
yeah, I'll send it to you and then we can send it along with this. There's actually there's some other resources that I like and I'll see if I can find them. They're outside of SCORE, but yeah, SCORE has a webinar on that because I checked on it or I mentioned it. I was like, I hope they do that. The really difference in lean canvas, it's not real complex. Again, all this stuff, everybody makes it out like it's so complicated, but it's really not. So this is a lean canvas model. And you'll notice these boxes over here that say problem, solution, key metric. And the box that says unfair advantage, that's in the lean model. That's the question. It's about what problem are you solving for your customer base? And what is your solution to that? In the business canvas model, which is what most people promote, those say, what are your key activities? who are your key partners? So it's just a little bit different wording. I just like this one better because it gets centric on the customer and the customer's pain or problem, which is what I think we ought to be in business. We ought to be about solving, making solutions for people we want to serve. For me, that's the heart of business. All right. Well, thank you all so much for coming. I really appreciate the support and your attention. And if you happen to work with me and you want to put this on our agenda, feel free to bring it up in any of our classes. If you don't want to work with me, sign up and I'll be glad to work with you. The cost point is really good in SCORE. We're absolutely deliver value for what we charge. So we hope. Anyway, well, thank you all very much for being here. You didn't get a book and you want a book, stop by. We've got a couple left. If you don't like to read and you want the audio version, you'll have to send me an email and I will secretly send you the code for the audio book. Oh, email, yeah, if you want to email me. It'll be on the slide. It's way back here. Anyway, it's on the slide if you want to get in touch with me directly, or you can go on SCORE's website and I'm here. Thank y'all.
Thank you.
I'll hang around. If you have questions, feel free to come up and visit. Well, Jeff, thanks for the great knowledge on beekeeping. Hope this was interesting and helpful for you. Oh, just have to ask.
He said, no, so here.
You got it.
Jeff James, can I get your name?
Thank you for your time.
Okay.
American.
Was there a guy in line named Jonathan?
No, but several people Dan Diamond.
Oh, no, Dan, I said hi.
He's still on,
Hey, Dan. I
And,
haven't forgot you. I got all your stuff sitting on my desk. I'll send it to you this weekend.
and Quincy Williams.
Oh, hey, Dr. Q, Sheila's here and we're setting up a meeting with you on the 2nd at the library. We'll send out an invite.
And the other person online is Valerie Nichols. I don't know if you know Valerie.
Hi, Valerie. Thanks for coming tonight.
Yeah, so.
Right.
Thank
Thank
you, Kate.
you, everybody.
Appreciate all your support. None of this happens without you.
Thanks. All right, we'll see y'all later, virtual attendees. Watch for that email.